Hi, my name is Wren. I've been given this R18 on courtesy of Classic Motorcycle Channel just to try it out for you guys. I've had it for about 2-3 weeks, and what we're going to do today is go through the pros and cons of this bike. Starting with the pros, as always, this is a proper modern classic. I mean, it looks like an old bike, but you've got all the beauty of having that modern power sat within it. Those 1800 boxer engine is just incredible to ride with. Starting at the back here, you've got this really classically styled fishtail exhaust. You really just don't see anything like it on modern bikes these days. It's definitely sort of harking to this era. And then if you follow it up, you've got this beautiful paint job. I believe this is reserved for the option 719. So this is an uprated option, a uprated paint job, and you've got these forged wheels as well. That comes with the option 719s. Following up, you've got this beautifully stitched seat. I think this is really beautifully done. Going up, you've got this deceivingly small tank, but it looks the business. I mean, I've run out of fuel without thinking. I thought I'd go a bit longer, but it is a beautiful tank. And then you've got these really wide bars, so your seating position is really quite relaxed, quite cruiser stance, really comfortable riding position, absolutely. This headlight, you've got your integrated headlight, so as you're going around bends in the dark, it lights up that corner for you, so that was really useful on a sort of late ride when coming back really late. Something that I'm not used to. Most of my bikes like handles in the wind, so that was a really good feature. So obviously the standout feature of this bike is this huge boxer engine. You sit on this bike, you feel like it's very wide, but the power that sits in there, I mean, it's an 1800, so I mean, as big if not bigger than the average car, and you definitely know that because as you're going along, if you ask for it to pull along, you're gone. It's got two modes within this bike. You've got the rock and you've got the roll. The roll is a bit more cruisier, it's a bit, I wouldn't say sleepy, but it's sleepier. You put it into rock, it guzzles through, it powers through. It's a really well engineered engine on this. One thing that I did note when hopping on it and doing your courtesy rev as you do, the bike sort of shifts you to the left as it pulls you over in that engine, so definitely something to watch out for, but you soon get used to it. It's not anything that sort of raised any concerns. It's just that initial keen little rev before I set off on this bike. Coming up to the front of the bike, I thought these forks were really unique, sort of like starting off narrow and then widening out here and coming back down. It's just sort of like shows some afterthought when it comes to this bike. And then if you take it further up here, I thought it was nice that these indicators, they're big but they're tucked in, so you really don't notice that they're there, but they provide everything you need to. They could have attached it off here, that would have been a very classic styling, but it would have taken away from all of this front that they've given themselves, all this engineering gone into here. We've also clocked as well, you've got the steering stabilizer underneath here. Definitely helps when it comes to the handling of the bike, because obviously it's quite a hard suspension on this, so any little bit of help definitely goes a long way. So everything on this bike is just big. Everything is just, it's also well connecting though. So, I mean, obviously you've got the size of this thing, the head of the pipe is just huge, going into this really beautiful, huge exhaust. And you feel like it's big. When you're on there, you feel like you've got a lot of power underneath you. You feel like that you've got a lot of power on the road as well, like you're being seen, like you are on this bike. So really stepping away from the classic and truly into the modern, this is a keyless bike. The only time you need that key is for the steering lock. Everything else is just in your pocket and you're ready to go. To start this bike, you've just got your on button here and then clutch in, press down on here and away you go. You also on this side you have your heated grips, which is, they are really effective. I've only actually had to have these, I mean we are in the depths of summer, but I've only had to have these on 2, just as sort of like a night ride, just to keep a bit more comfortable. And then if I take you round to this side, you've got plenty of switches here that do all sorts of things. So this mode takes you through the options I was talking about before. You've got the rock, roll, and you've also got rain mode. And then this menu takes you through all sorts of features up on this dash, and we'll just turn it on so we can show you what that's all about. So it doesn't take long to power through. Considering it's such a large bike, it's pretty much ready to start as soon as you go. We go through this menu and you've got all sorts of options. Everything that you would expect in a modern bike, your mile per gallon, that was your date, your battery voltage, which is a nice one. Plenty of options through there. But then also if you click the mode button, that's when you're going to find your rock, your rain and your roll. All different ride styles. Roll is certainly more relaxed, more chill. Rock is definitely much more aggressive. And I haven't tried rain mode on this, but I imagine it's going to be adapted for wetter conditions. Something I was really truly surprised about was the manoeuvrability of this bike. I thought I'm on a long, heavy machine, I'm going to have to be really conscious of limited manoeuvrability, but it has put me in a few circumstances where I've needed it, and it just does it beautifully. You can really sort of swan around the road on this. I had a scenario on the way to filming today where a car broke on the roundabout, and I noticed as I'm pulling off and had to anchor on the brakes and do a quick whoosh, and it just did it without, I didn't feel like I was in any danger, it just did it straight away. So that was a really surprising feature of this bike. When you're cruising through country roads, we did a bit of both, we did motorway and country roads, it was just handling everything so beautifully. The size of this engine is quite intimidating for doing anything more than you're leaning over. I'm sure it's perfectly capable of that, but it's not something I was doing just because it is intimidating. There is a lot there, and I mean, you scrape that, you're doing somersaults. Other than that, coming around into this car park here, just going in around the speed bumps to make sure I wasn't going in them, sort of doing your U-turns. It really is, for such a long bike, that wheel sat right back here, really wide position. It was perfect. It was really nothing that I thought, oh, I'm going to have to really plan my manoeuvre here. If you ever are in a sticky circumstance on this bike where that manoeuvrability just isn't working for you and you need to do a 3-point turn, the bike has reverse. It's a heavy bike. It's a brilliant addition for me, and you can just use the starter motor, and it just nips you back, and then you clonk it back into gear, and away you go. So I'll just show you where that reverse gear is on this bike. You've got this little lever down here, and all you have to do to knock it into reverse is push that right down. It'll engage. You won't be able to put the bike into gear once this is there. And then you just come up to here and you click this ignition button, away you zoom. Despite all of this modern gadgetry throughout this modern classic bike, they don't push away from the classic feel. Everything just feels so inclusive to getting that classic feel amongst here. I mean, your dial is just non-intrusive, it's small, you don't have this great big digital dash, it's just very simple within here. Everything is just all in one place. It's very inconspicuous. So when it comes to the actual full styling of this bike, none of that modern aspect gets in the way of its heritage. Going into the cons about this bike, and the list is pretty small. One of the main aspects about this is, I'm assuming that BMW have launched this as a cruiser, something that you go long distance on. But what I found is because it is such a big bike and there is so much power going underneath you, you feel it. You're feeling it through your bars, you're feeling it through your feet, you're feeling it through your seat. And it can become quite fatiguing after maybe an hour and a half of riding. You really need to sort of get off the bike and shake it out and go along. The features on the bike do help that. So roll, which is a calmer feature. You can really notice when you're sat idling, your bars aren't shaking as much. But if you've got this bike in rock, this bike is raring to go as you're sat there. So that would be one of the cons, is the vibrations through this bike are pretty serious. I think if you were to do some tasteful modifications of your own, you'd be able to make it a bit more comfortable. Perhaps change out the seat just to soak up some of those vibrations, different pegs. But it's understandable. It's a massive bike. There is going to be some power rumbling through. So it's something that I feel isn't going to put people off when it comes to buying a bike like this. A second con that is controversial here at Classic Motorcycle Channel is I found the brakes just weren't up to it. You've got all this power underneath you and you can get up to speed really fast. I kind of want to come down from that speed pretty fast too if, you know, conditions mean I need it. I found that I really wasn't getting much braking power out the front, and the rear was a little bit better, but it just didn't feel like I was getting much stopping motion out of this. Now, again, it's a massive bike, it's a massive engine, there's a lot of stopping needed, but personally, I would like some more braking power. To me, it felt a little bit spongy. But Alex, who's behind the camera, has taken it out just now, and he thinks they're great. He thinks that it does what it needs to do, that the braking is not a problem. So I think maybe it might be a personal preference. Maybe I'm used to brakes that have that bit sharper of a reaction. A really interesting little con is I sat on this seat. I set off and I thought I was sat on something, and I couldn't work it out until I pulled over because I thought if I feel around under this seat, I might lose it as I'm going. So what it turned out is it's this little BMW plaque. It's a very gorgeous plaque, but it's right there in your tailbone. So something that I would potentially look to change out, or you just get used to it, I don't know, but not something that I was too thrilled by initially. This one is neither a pro or a con, it's just more of a neutral point, just something to take note of. This gear shifter, you've got your heel up. If you were to want to shift up and down without using this, the bike kind of forces you into it. It's quite a tough deal to get your foot under this, and it's stiff. So it forces you to use this, but as I got used to riding using this heel shifter, it was actually more comfortable. I completely get why they've done it, and it's a great way to shift through the gears. I never found an issue with it afterwards. So once you sort of get used to that, it's an easy deal with this bike. Taking it back to the size of these engines and how intimidating wide they feel, when you're cornering and when you're doing those twisties, you're concerned you're going to hit this first. I mean, realistically, you're going to hit this and you're going to flip this up. But it is something that's constantly in the back of your mind. I feel like if you own this bike and you were riding it across miles, you get to feel about how much that you can sort of take those sweeping bends. But when you're initially on this bike and the sort of last couple of weeks that I've been riding it, it is intimidating. You don't really want to explore where that lean angle is, because obviously if it is this, the results are pretty catastrophic. So one of the key aspects I found about this bike is I'm assuming it's aimed at the cruiser market. So when you're cruising, I'm assuming you're going to be riding on motorways, you're going to be doing long distances. I found on this bike, above 60 I was getting battered. It's a naked bike, it's to be expected, but it was more so I was trying to keep my head still. The riding position has you very sort of parachuted, so you do feel that wind pressure coming in. I imagine after a long haul that would be quite fatiguing. So then that brings up the question is this a cruiser, or is this something that you just pop out on a Sunday? It looks cool, you feel cool, but you're not looking to lay down the miles on it. I don't know. For me personally, I wouldn't want to do a long haul on any sort of fast roads. It would be B roads all the way to really actually enjoy what this bike feels like it wants to do. Welcome to my garden, bit of change of scenery. We actually completely forgot to film our outro because it was so hot when we were doing our review last week. So quick review now for the R18. This bike is something that you would get if you wanted to go for something out of BMW's heritage. It really is a bike that looks old worldy, but doesn't perform that way. It performs like a completely modern, capable bike. It really has that great base structure for something really cool to be built from it. They also have plenty of aftermarket parts out there to add your own little twist. So final thoughts altogether, it's a great bike for its look, its characteristics, it's very heritage. It's surprisingly manoeuvrable for such a large bike. But it is a large bike. It is something that you have to ride. You have to understand that it's not something you're going to be pushing around with all much ease. So definitely use all those capabilities. We showed you the reverse gear on there. But yeah, R18, tick in my book.